Or not, just about 2 more weeks of summer before the new school year starts for many kids across the valley, and now is the time to start getting back into a routine and tackle any of those back-to-school jitters. So joining us this morning to help us ease into the new school year is psychiatrist Anna Shire. Thanks so much for joining us. You always have such great information.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I love being here.
And this is kind of a pivotal time for a lot of kids, kind of the transition from summer back to school. But with that can kind of come some nerves, right?
Absolutely, yes. And it's such a hard transition for all kids, whether it's their first day ever at being in school to the kids who are starting high school and making that large transition.
Yeah, so there's quite a few. Let's start with the little kids. What can you kind of do to kind of mitigate some of those fears about going to school?
So the biggest thing is to actually talk to your kids about what their fears are, because as an adult, we have no idea. Some of the little things that from our perspective might seem silly are huge fears for them, like where's the bathroom, or is mommy really going to pick me up? So you find out from them what their fears are and then try to validate it. So don't say, oh, it's nothing to be scared of, but more, that sounds really scary. And okay, let's think about it. So if I don't come to pick you up, this is where you go, and your teacher will bring you here, and this is a number that I'll sew into your backpack so that if anything happens, you know who to call, and this is where you call, so that all of their questions and worries are answered and they know that you're taking them seriously.
Sure, it sounds like communication is definitely key during this back to school time. What about for older kids? Maybe let's talk high school, middle school kids when they're going back to school, because sometimes they're not as apt to maybe open up with mom and dad about kind of what some of those fears are.
Yeah, so usually what you'll see with the older kids is more irritability. So if you start to see some more of the irritability or the anger or the kind of snapping back when you do ask some questions about school, that's the time to start to worry that, okay, there might be something that's going on that is bothering them. And a lot of times just being open to them and not pushing and not asking too many questions is really what's necessary, because the more you push, the more you'll get pushback.
Sure.
But if you just kind of leave an open space, then that's a lot more likely to get some information as a parent.
When do you know when maybe there's like a bigger issue underlying that you really kind of want to maybe talk to maybe the school counselors and administrators there? When can you kind of determine that?
So when kids start to refuse to go to school, that's a huge, huge issue, especially once even one day has gone by where they've successfully been able to keep themselves from going into school because of their anxiety or their fears of going to school. Once even one day happens, it gets so much harder every subsequent day. So once your child starts to say, you know, I really just don't want to go, and starts giving you a lot of pushback, and you start to feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't, and I should let them stay at home, that's when you need to start getting other people involved, because it's a really difficult spiral to pull yourself up and out of.
Now, I know also we're talking about little kids going the first time they've ever gone to school. What are some of their biggest fears that you hear?
So, you know, it's their fears, again, that as an adult you wouldn't necessarily think about. The biggest one, though, is what if mommy doesn't pick me up? And,
that was mine. I'm not going to lie. I was always worried that mom wasn't going to be there.
Yeah.
And how am I going to find my way home? A bus, a taxi?
Right, and every now and then it happens. So I had, you know, for instance, just the other day, I had one little girl, because it did happen to her older brother, and he was so scared, and now that's going to happen to me. And kind of confirmed that it does happen. So that's where we talked about, this is what you do, step 1, step 2, step 3, and then it helped because they had an idea, right, and their fear was validated.
Yeah.
They weren't just poo-pooed.
What about, let's talk about going from the middle school transition to high school transition, because that's a really big one that can cause a lot of nerves as well. Going from a totally kind of,
Definitely.
you know, a lot of friends, and now it's going to be a bigger school, totally different teachers.
Right. You know, throughout the whole transition from elementary to middle to high school, it's all about gaining independence. So entering into high school is that next step to gaining independence into moving into college successfully, if that's the direction that you want to go. So it's really about letting your kids take the lead. What do you want to do? You know, what are your plans after school? And just letting them do it, giving them that space with safety boundaries. And as long as they stick with your rules, they're good to go. If they don't, then we have to talk about how you're going to rein it in. But otherwise, you just kind of let them spread their wings and move into that next transition.
Some really good information as we get ready for back to school. Real quick, how can people get a hold of you if they have extra questions?
Oh, they can go to our website. It's www.drshire.com.
All right, Dr. Shire, thank you so much as always.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.